Welcome back to the Riley Lewis Show, everybody. This is part 2 of this episode with a recurring guest, Antonio Giusto. Antonio, it's great to have you back.
Thank you for having me again.
So, let's continue our discussion, and let's talk about some of the things that we'll again, like we were just saying off camera there, we're not going to factor in 2020 and coronavirus. So, up until 2020, beginning in January 1, 2017, what has been your feeling about the trajectory of the country, our politics, some of our foreign policy decisions? How have you been feeling so far about the Trump administration?
Well, I would say he's absolutely kept a lot of his promises regarding going out of alliances and really just showing everybody else that we're not going to be messed around with anymore. Probably the most famous example of that being when he went after Soleimani.
I mean, right. So for you, is that right? No, so for people who are unfamiliar, Soleimani was a very top-ranking Iranian official, and Iran the regime there is interesting in that they have a lot of ties to various terror organizations around the Middle East and the North Africa region. One of those being Hezbollah. So Soleimani was someone who had been a senior ranking official, correct? In
Yes.
that government. And
so yeah, he was
absolutely right. So that was a target, if you will, in the counter-terror movement.
Yeah.
Basically.
And on top of that.
So let's talk about the economy also then. How are your feelings about how the economy has been going?
Well, for C-19, it was just the greatest we'd ever seen. You know, I was getting a lot more money in my paychecks. Everyone I knew we were all saving a lot, and we were making a lot more than we were before, and just everything was
Why do you think
amazing.
That is?
I would say it's primarily because of what was put in place nationwide by Trump. I unfortunately don't have any specific orders memorized off the top of my head, but I remember seeing in forums and online that people were saying, wow, I didn't expect him to actually do this. Because of what he passed, I have an extra $200 in my paycheck now. And stuff like that, that is what people do like. And as we see in election patterns, presidents who lower taxes do tend to get reelected.
So are you thinking that it's likely that he will be reelected?
I would say as of right.
Yeah, do you think it'll be close? What do you think?
I think it's going to be close, but it will be in Trump's favor.
Okay.
With Kanye announcing he's running for president, assuming it is to be taken seriously.
It shouldn't be, but
yeah. Assuming it was, though, that would further polarize the Democrat vote with Biden. Or if he were to run as an if he were to run as an independent, there is, of course, all the progressives that you and I know all too well, where they flat out said we're not voting because it should have been Bernie Sanders, and that's another 10 to 30% of their voting bloc just instantly decimated, and that could very easily go to Kanye if he were to run as an independent. And if he were to run as a Republican, I just don't see many Republicans flipping over to Kanye.
I think that's kind of a joke.
Maybe the ones maybe our age who aren't really that politically engaged, maybe they would, but I just don't see it happening on a grand enough scale to polarize the Republican vote. But considering how late it is and how in many states he actually can no longer get on the ticket, for example, in California, I think it's something like he has to get 200,000 votes in 30 days in order to get on the ballot. And it's a lot harder than it sounds.
It is a lot harder than it sounds, even though it sounds pretty difficult. That said, so if you're a strategist and your goal is to keep this president in office, then what are you trying to emphasize? What are some of the big headline points?
For campaigning or
absolutely for just branding, campaigning, absolutely.
For campaigning, I would say go to as many swing states as you can. There's even a few new ones. Arizona now being a purple state.
Absolutely.
Go to because the Democrats are also going to be going for those like crazy too. And on top of that, also go for the known Republican strongholds like Texas and much of Middle America, because Texas in particular, they are they are going after that in particular a lot this time because of its high electoral count. I even see celebrities donating to turn it blue, so they know that that is the Republican stronghold and hopefully always will be. But because of its now transient status, it has unfortunately kind of made it from deep red to a lighter shade of red. So
I mean,
I would also go.
Mm-hmm.
I would also go for
Go ahead.
those ones too, but primarily do the swing states.
So, what do you think about? I mean, clearly, what's going on is there's sort of a unity through division policy that I think is sort of sweeping certain parts of the Democratic electorate. And I'm wondering, what do you think the Democratic Party might look like in 10 years, even 5 years? Say 2020 goes to Trump. Where do you think the Democratic Party will be by 2024?
I see two possibilities.
What are they?
One being there will no longer be a Democrat Party. It's going to shift all the way to progressive
Oh,
because
okay, interesting.
as of right now, Cortez having just won another reelection, it shows that
Wow.
their kind is unfortunately gaining a lot of traction. And while it makes it easier for the normal Americans to decide which party to vote for, it's bad for the Democrat Party because now they're losing their moderate base increasingly because people like that are starting to take over, and all the um, all the cities that were affected by the rioting. My favorites being Andrew Cuomo, Jay Inslee, and Gavin Newsom. They gave those rioters special privileges. They essentially made it legal to burn a church, but not to go to church.
We were talking about this earlier. Yeah, I posted, I saw something online that I put up that nobody responded to, which I predicted, which is that Gavin Newsom, 19 counties in California closed down again,
Yep,
especially for the
72
July 4th, especially for the July 4th weekend, but not Napa County, where Gavin Newsom's
winery.
winery, yeah, I think Plumwood or something Wines Vineyards was booking reservations for wine tasting on the 4th of July and the 5th
Someone like
and the
that
6th.
Someone like that is a classic case of rules for thee, but not for me.
Right. And
You
I
know,
think that do you think people are starting to notice that more?
oh yeah, what doesn't help is that back when all this first started, him and his family took a weekend trip to Montana.
I remember that.
Back when everybody else was supposed to be inside their houses
I remember that.
looking to him for guidance, he went to Montana. I think that and as much as I dislike the guy, I think that if he just stuck to his promise of we're going to keep it 15 days and we're going to see what happens after that, I think he would have been a national hero. Honestly, he would have been a he would have been a shoe.
I don't know if we even could have such a figure anymore that would be a bipartisan national hero. I don't know if that could
Yeah,
even
and,
exist right now.
yeah, and it certainly isn't going to help his run for senator in 2026.
True. I mean, I don't think it would help the future of his political career. Period.
And now increasingly throughout the state, which I didn't think I'd ever see in my life. So California, I'm really proud of you for this. There's now more petitions to recall him, and you probably even saw last night in LA that after Garcetti said we're going to keep it closed down until there's a vaccine. Last night, you could probably find this on any news channel. All of LA County was just the whole sky was lit up with fireworks the whole night. It was just one of the most beautiful sights I ever witnessed.
Wow.
Because
I did hear about that.
people are finally starting to see through just how inept and apathetic that our governor and all of the Democrat mayors are, and it's a beautiful thing to witness. I just hope that it carries through to November.
So, I mean, let me ask you something. Then with this sort of theme, like what is your end goal after 2020? I mean, do you have long-term things that you'd like to see happen with the country, with with either one of the parties? I mean, what are some of your, and also what are some of your it's a good time to talk about some of the things that get you politically motivated. What are some
Okay,
of the things
yeah.
that get you interested in, yeah, being
So,
being political?
start. Would you like me to start with a particular party? You want me to start with the GOP, maybe?
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
So for the GOP, I want them to actually grow some stones in a spine. They need to stand up for themselves for once and get some more figureheads into their party, aside from the ones that we usually see. We are seeing that a little bit with Madison Cawthorn, who just won North Carolina. He's my age, and he's now I believe, congressional representative. And over in Utah, we saw former NFL player Burgess Owens win a seat as well. What I like about that is these are guys who are not career politicians. They're not bought out by any PACs, and they still have their morals to go by. And that's a nice thing to witness too. And hopefully that continues throughout 2020 and onward. And for the Democrat Party, I'd like for them get get off their moral superiority high horse, realize that they too have flaws like everyone else in America, get their party aligned so that they can actually have essentially common ground on at least one issue. Because one famous guy I was listening to, he says, when you hear a Democrat, what do you think of? And Riley, when you hear Democrat, what do you think of? Do you think of someone like Harris or someone like Sanders or someone like Cortez? What do you think of?
I mean, the word Democrat, definitely someone probably like Kamala Harris, who's just status quo, interested in corporations and, making sure their wallet, someone like Newsom, who's just interested in making sure their wallet gets filled, regardless of how
Yeah,
we're doing, right? If our wallets are
yeah,
getting filled.
yeah.
And
As long as
similarly to
he's
your other point, when I hear GOP, I think party of people who are too weak or not interested in standing up for true Burkean cultural conservative values.
we need that.
At every single moment in which there is a clash between a progressive idea and a culturally conservative idea, we tend to see the progressive idea win.
Yeah,
And
because
in some cases, I mean, progressive is another one of those words where there's semantic overload. Obviously, everybody wants progress, meaning we want to live a better life now than people did 1,000 years ago. Who would want to live like it's the Middle Ages, right? Like you
yeah,
would,
no way.
who would want to just get rid of their car, their washing machine, and everything they own, and say, I'm only
And
going to
drive
write
forward
letters and hand
the
deliver
bond.
them to people. Yeah, I mean, who's gonna write letters by candlelight in the winter and burn? So obviously, the idea of we want things to be better over time is obvious, but that's just not that progressive doesn't mean just that. It means a lot of other stuff too.
Yeah, now
And
it's
there are a lot of things that you could attribute to that. So for me, what's most concerning is that while people like AOC will be live streaming on Twitter, you don't see young conservative people, cultural conservatives, trying to, make their points to people and do any outreach. So I would say what I would like to see change for the GOP is a new wave of people who actually want to advocate for, culturally conservative ideas in the 21st century and advocate it to young people and do youth outreach. There's got to be younger, fresher faces in the party overall.
yeah, and
That
right now being the most famous example, Madison Cawthorn of North Carolina. We need more guys like that, young and willing to go for the
right.
maintaining the cultural side of society.
Well, and that said, I also would like to see, really people, I think, of all persuasions, doesn't matter what letters next to your name. If you're a reasonable person right now and you're concerned about the postmodern revolution that is seeking to uninvent the United States, then I think that we we owe it to the people who fought for this country, the people who died for it, the people who were enslaved for it. We owe it to them to make this thing work. And if we really do want to make it so that we are able to assuage and eventually, extinguish, not extinguish, but assuage this movement that is in my mind just completely revolutionary in the sense that they just want to burn things to the ground. I just think if we want a republic, we have to not let something like that happen. So some things have to change. And I think that more outreach and more transparency are things that would really encourage people to want to be more political. Transparency and outreach are two very good things that, to your point about the President Trump campaigning in 2016, West Virginia went for Trump because he visited West Virginia 4 times in 1 month. And his opponent didn't. Hillary Clinton did not go to West Virginia. So that made a difference in how they turned out. So whoever you want in office, I think people need to realize that that's a big part of it, is that people need to be able to feel like they're heard and they matter, and that will make them feel inclined to want to not only be political but also vote for you.
Yep,
And that is a
absolutely.
place that I think is a good place to end it. I think this was a good conversation. I feel like this is a good place to end it. If you have any final points you'd like to make.
Um, I would have to say, if any, I hope that the voters out there who may be on the fence, I hope they don't forget which party was the one that kept you down and allowed the rioting to happen. Hopefully, you guys don't forget that this November and remember which side wanted you to open your businesses back up, get back to work while still maintaining safety protocols, whereas the other side just wanted to keep the economy down as long as possible to make Trump look bad. Hopefully, you guys don't forget that this November.
Okay, well, very, very, very interesting stuff. Thank you, Antonio, for your time again. I always appreciate it.
Sure. And I always appreciate being on here.
And thank you, everybody, for listening to today's episode of The Riley Lewis Show. I always appreciate it. Again, if you'd like to support me and support my content, you can find me online at anchor.fm or Spotify or Google and Apple podcasts. You can also subscribe to my YouTube channel, like the video, or leave me a comment in the comment section down below and let me know how I'm doing. You'll also find a link in the description to my Patreon page where you can sign up and become a member. Antonio Giusto, thank you so much for joining me.
And thank you for having me on, Riley.